The Slavic vampire, often referred to as the Upyr, or vampire, in Eastern European folklore, is a central figure in Slavic mythology and folklore, contributing to modern vampire lore. These creatures are typically depicted as undead beings who rise from their graves to feast on the blood of the living, representing the fear of death, disease, and the unknown. The Slavic vampire differs from the romanticized, sophisticated vampires of modern fiction, often portraying a more gruesome, terrifying figure. The belief in vampires among Slavic peoples dates back to the pre-Christian era. Vampires were thought to be created through unnatural deaths, such as suicides or unbaptized individuals, or from improper burial rites. Another common belief was that individuals who had been evil during their lives, especially those who practiced witchcraft, would return as vampires. Common Slavic belief indicates a stark distinction between soul and body. The soul is not considered to be perishable. The Slavs believed that upon death, the soul would go out of the body and wander about its neighborhood and workplace for 40 days before moving on to an eternal afterlife. During this time, the soul was believed to have the capability of re-entering the corpse of the deceased. The passing soul could either bless or wreak havoc on its family and neighbors during its 40 days of passing. Upon an individual's death, much stress was placed on proper burial rites to ensure the soul's purity and peace as it separated from the body. The death of an unbaptized child, a violent or an untimely death, or the death of a grievous sinner, such as a sorcerer or murderer, were all grounds for a soul to become unclean after death. A soul could also be made unclean if its body were not given a proper burial. Unlike the elegant, pale figures of modern vampire stories, the Slavic vampire was typically described as bloated with ruddy or dark skin, a sign of its recent feeding. The vampire's body was often still decomposing, with its fingernails and hair continuing to grow after death. These physical traits, combined with their gruesome method of sustenance, drinking blood or consuming flesh, made the Slavic vampire a horrifying figure. Slavic communities developed various methods to protect themselves from vampire. These included placing objects such as garlic or iron around the grave, using religious symbols like crosses, or driving a wooden stake through the heart of the suspected vampire. Some regions would burn the corpse or decapitate it to ensure it could no longer rise. The fear of vampires was so pervasive that rituals and practices aimed at preventing vampirism were woven into daily life and burial customs. The placement of a coin in the mouth of the deceased, turning the body face down, or binding the corpse were meant to prevent them from rising and harming the living. The Slavic vampire has profoundly influenced the development of the vampire myth in Western literature. Bram Stoker's Dracula, for example, was heavily inspired by these legends, and the Romanian version of the Slavic vampire myth shaped the depiction of Count Dracula. While modern portrayals of vampires have evolved into more seductive and less grotesque figures, the core concept of the undead feeding on the living remains rooted in the Slavic tradition. In conclusion, the Slavic vampire is a darker and more terrifying version of the vampire myth than its modern counterpart. Its origins in death rituals, its monstrous appearance, and its connections to disease and decay highlight humanity's long-standing fears of mortality and the afterlife.